Alright guys, well you came back here to see a follow-up on this Toyota Corolla, and as you read the title of the video, did automatic transmission fluid fix low compression? The answer is no, it did not fix low compression. All it did was make a lot of smoke, and it pointed to maybe the rings were damaged, don't really know, but so I had to take the engine apart to figure out what was wrong with it. And what we're going to do is we're going to give you the results of what we found. We didn't really make any in-depth videos of this because, quite frankly, it's not very interesting, but there is a hell of a lot of Corollas out there, and we did get a hell of a lot of response for this problem. Now, I don't know if because Gail was in the thumbnail showing you guys the compression specs, but we are going to get to that in a second. We're going to go there. We're going to show you the compression specs of, well, let's just cut right to it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to tell you what was wrong with the engine in a second. So Gail will be right here right away. So here she is. All right, guys, you ready to find out what was wrong with this thing? All right, Gail, tell them what was wrong with it.
All right. Ding, 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 ding. It was head gasket.
The head gasket. All right, well,
The
son of a
head
gun.
gasket.
All right, well, I'm going to get the head gasket, and I'm going to show you what happened to the head gasket in this thing, because hopefully you guys won't waste any time dealing with this issue, because we're going to get to the nuts and bolts of this thing right now. So, Gail, you ready to take the camera?
I am.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Go.
All right, 2ZRFE is the engine that's in this Corolla from '09. This is the very first year they put this engine in this car, and they used it, from what I'm gathering, all the way up to 2015. And I don't know if Toyota has been keeping it hush-hush about what's really going on with it, but they have these problems, and a lot of people are suffering from this problem, and it's interesting. I mean, I'm a Toyota guy, and I'm a diehard, and I thought, well, you know what? Well, we put in transmission fluid, and it obviously showed that the rings built compression, but the reality is it wasn't that. I never expected it to be the head gasket, which is shocking to me because I had to pull the cylinder head off of it to see that. But right here's the head gasket. And I'm going to have Gail come in here and have a look at this and show you what happened. If you look right here, it's burned between number 1 and number 2 cylinder. Right there. It burned right across. And it burned across 3 and 4. Now, if you remember what our compression ratio ratings were, they were very low across the board, which never really was an indication of a head gasket being the problem, because usually when a head gasket blows, it's between 2 adjacent cylinders. Meaning if it would this would have been blown out, we would have had low compression on number 1 and 2 cylinder, but not 3 and 4, because the compression is leaking past here into the cylinder. So why it was rattling and pinging so much is because you had exhaust gases mixing with your fresh gases when the engine was trying to run. But because it had compression that was kind of almost across the board, I never expected it to be the head gasket, but sure hell it is. And there's just enough left of between cylinders 2 and 3. It had already started burning across, but it didn't burn quite across all the way yet. So I decided to buy a Toyota head gasket because it is a metal head gasket. I was just surprised that it did what it did. You know, usually, like when I say with head gaskets, it's usually between 2 cylinders. Well, this was a really rare case where you had cylinders opposing each other, and the 2 middle ones were not. So the engine did run, not very well, but it did run. So what I did is off camera, I don't know what, a month or 2 ago at least.
Yeah.
I put a head gasket on it. And thinking that, well, shit, we could fix the engine, you know, we're set to go. But I noticed when I pulled the cylinder head off of it that someone had already been in this engine before. I could see where the cylinders were honed. And I think, well, we'll get to that in a second, what I thought, that someone had been in here before. So somewhere along this car's life, somewhere, and I did not go to Toyota and run the VIN through their database because I'm curious to know if this was done at a dealer or it was done at a private garage. But they had honed the cylinders out, so somebody had been in here already trying to fix this engine once before. I know the shop that I work at, they were throwing coil packs at it, and it was slowly losing power for a long period of time, but they kept nursing it along, which didn't really help matters when you've got something like this happening. The fact that it's the head gasket blew is kind of just strange, but we're gonna get to it. So after the head gasket was put on, started the engine back up, and something bad happened, and we're gonna get to that also in a second. But I'm gonna have Gail show you guys what the compression specs were after the head gasket was put on. So you ready, Gail?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. All right, Gail, tell them what number 1 cylinder compression was after the head gasket was replaced.
Ding, 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 ding.
130.
Yep, 130.
And that's what we had when we dumped oil in it.
Right.
So it actually built compression, even though we were losing it through the head gasket. 130 is what we ended up with. Now that is far away from the 150 or 60 psi this thing's supposed to be, but that's okay because the engine will run pretty good on 130 psi. All right, so let's do number 2. Ready for number 2, guys?
All right, here we go.
All right. All right, Gail, tell us what the compression of number 2 cylinder is.
Ding, 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 ding. Big old number 85.
85. So
Yeah.
after the head gasket was replaced,
Yep.
85 was the best it had, which is what it had before.
Right.
So nothing ever changed even after the head gasket was replaced
No.
on number 2 cylinder. Now, when I was saying to you earlier, I do notice that number 2 cylinder, the hone marks in that cylinder were definitely kind of like someone wasn't doing it right. So that might explain why number 2 cylinder is basically junk. It runs,
Right.
but you can tell that it's there, but it's not misfiring because there's a fresh plug in it. But all right, Gail, let's go on to number 3 cylinder.
All right.
All right, Gail, let's show the fans what the compression of number 3 cylinder was.
Ding, 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 ding.
Damn,
I know, right?
that's some gnarly compression right there.
165.
Yeah, okay. Well, that was our strong cylinder.
I know.
Always.
Yeah.
It always was. Even with oil, that cylinder never really changed a whole lot
No.
as far as compression. And that is the cylinder that didn't have that was the side of the head gasket that didn't really lose anything right there between 2 and 3. So
Right.
number 3 is a strong one, and I think the compression ratio of this engine is supposed to be around like 185. So 165 will get it done with 167,000 miles on it. Number 3 cylinder looks like it'll survive just fine.
It will.
So, all right, well, that's number 3 cylinder, Gail.
Okay.
All right, ready for number 4?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
All right, Gail. Let's show the fans what number 4 was.
Ding, 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 ding. 130.
130.
Yep.
Well, that's what we had when we had oil in it. Somewhat probably in that ballpark, so that really didn't change a whole lot.
No.
And 130 is kind of, I wouldn't call it super weak, but it's not super strong. No. And so that's that. So,
Right.
all right, well, let's get to the next part of this video with the outcome of did automatic transmission fluid fix slow compression on a 2009 Toyota Corolla? Are we ready for it?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
All right. Well, now that Gail has shown you all the compression numbers, you'll have to vote for which cylinder you like the best and put it in the comments section. Okay, so getting this all back together, the day that I finished the head gasket, and it is a pain in the ass, you gotta take the chains off, and it's got variable cam timing, and all this stuff has to be lined up just right to make it right. I'm like, cool, this is gonna fix this car. I was totally stoked, and I'm like ready to go, and I started the engine, and let me show you what happens when you start the engine. I'm gonna have now what you might be hearing is a lot of tappity tapping. But it's tappity tapping pretty good. In fact, we were gonna name it Dark Vader, and we changed our minds, and now the car is named Tappity Tap.
Yeah.
So now how the hell could the thing not tap before the head gasket was replaced, and after the head gasket replaced it started to tap? I'm like, that's very bizarre. I've never had an engine do that. So it sounds like it's starving for oil because the lifters aren't pumping up. Well, it turns out what I think is wrong with it, now in hindsight I should have done this, because Gail even mentioned this, I should have did a compression test on it after the head gasket was on, before I bothered wasting any more time with this motor. Engine. I don't like motor either, by the way, I like engine. So anyway, so I pulled the timing cover off, I bought a brand new set of lifters for it, and it didn't fix it. Actually, what I found is that when we started driving it after the head gasket, it would intermittently tap. It would tap for a while and then it would go away, and it would tap for a while and it would go away. Some days I would drive it to work and it wouldn't tap at all, but it had an intermittent tap problem because the lifters are starving. So when I took the whole top of the motor apart, took the cams out to put the new lifters in, almost all the intake lifters were collapsed. They didn't show signs of damage from, let me shut this tap thing off. Get in my tap. Anyway, so when I took the engine apart, took the cams back out and bought a brand new set of lifters, I noticed that all the intake lifters were collapsed. Only a couple of them were okay. All the exhaust ones were fine. So what's going on here, right? Well, it didn't stop tapping anymore. It taps continuously. And the thing is that it didn't have an oil pressure problem as far as it grinding up the lifters and damaging them. It was getting lubricated, but they were not pumping up, and it was the intake side. So I got into thinking, oh man, maybe, and this happens when you have an engine that's glued together with sealer. And this engine we know has been apart before. So when you glue a timing case cover back on with sealer, all of the pieces that are inside that tear off and fall off, they get spun around and sucked up and go places, and who knows where they went. But since we know the engine was apart before, I didn't know if any of those little rubber pieces from the sealer got caught in any of the journals or any of the places where the engine is trying to lubricate and push pressure into the galley, whatever you want to call it, to prime up the lifters on the intake side. So what I think has happened, and this has happened before in lots of cars. In fact, we just had a Hyundai Sonata with a timing chain problem, and the guy took it apart and found a whole bunch of pieces of silicone stuck in the hole where it was supposed to prime up the main tensioner for the timing chain. So I did an oil pressure check on it. I took the idiot-like thing out, and I put a real hose on it with a gauge on it, and it's got 50 to 60 pounds of oil pressure. So the oil pressure is fine, but oil pressure is not getting to the lifters on the intake side. So somewhere in there is little pieces of silicone that have broken off over time, because this motor has been apart, engine has been apart multiple times in its life, and we don't even know why. But for $500 for a clean car that's got all the stuff, you know what I mean, is it worth fixing? Well, right now we're just tapping away. It's just driving and it's going, and I know I would probably put a lot more time into the engine if number 2 cylinder didn't have low compression. So I wouldn't even have bothered putting lifters in this engine because it had low compression on number 2. The engine needed to come out and get re-overhauled. And for a $500 Corolla with 167,000 miles, I don't know. But in the meantime, I did a transmission service. I put new rear brakes on it. I mean, I realigned it. The car is fantastic, except now it tappity taps. So, unfortunately, if you guys have done research or own these things, you know that the engines are not cheap. The cheapest one I could find that was even worthy of buying is $1,500. Now, is Gail and I going to put $1,500 into a $500 car and maybe get a $3,000 or $4,000 Corolla out of it? Probably not. So, there's 2 things that are going to happen. 1, we're going to sell it and get my money back and someone else can fix it. 2, we're going to hope Mike Wilson gets a wrecked one in there, because it is 09 to 15, so you can use the same engine. And we'll get lucky and we'll get a free engine like he gave us that burned out Hyundai that provided parts for me and Gail's Hyundais. And then, I don't know. Or over the winter, I pluck the engine out and we do a full rebuild on the thing, and the rebuild kit's like $500-600, so it's cheap. I can rebuild the engine and fix it the right way, provided that number 2 cylinder is not out of spec where we need to go to a bigger size ring set, or we got to hone the cylinders out. Now the block's going to come apart, because I don't think there's anything wrong with the bearings themselves, so it's probably going to need to be re-ringed. But we're talking about budget stuff here, because we're not going to waste a whole lot of time putting money in a car. Now, if this was an S and it had all the cool wheels and a real nice interior, and the car had a sunroof, we would be fixing it for sure. But it's a base model car, and believe me, for being a Toyota guy, I'm not that super passionate about it, because it's not a very exciting car. I would prefer to move my time over to Gail's Hyundai and turbocharge it. So while this car is down getting a turbocharger, because we are going to do it, we've committed, we're going to do it for you guys, we're going to turbo the thing on a budget. We're going to show you how to make this thing fast on a little bit of money. using Ford parts. Gail's going to be driving tappity tap until it taps itself to death, or she says the motor blew or whatever, but we think that tappity tap is going to do just fine, and it's going to work out just fine for the local driving we do, but she's not going to be traveling interstates with tappity tap. It's going to be a local car, so if something
Right.
breaks on it, Mike Wilson can come save our asses. So anyway, that's that. So I hope you guys at least found the video, because this video actually, Gail, got a lot of hits.
Yeah, I know it
because
did.
you were in the thumbnail, but there are a lot of people that are looking to solve this problem, and I can't say that everybody's problem is the same, but hopefully the video we've provided will help you out, because I think Toyota built like 400,000 of these. So they're not rare, and they're out there. And it's looking like we're either going to put an engine in it used, or we're going to rebuild it, or I don't know, maybe we'll sell it and buy another project car. I'm not sure yet, but we do need a spare car for Gail to drive while hers is being turbocharged. So, well, I appreciate you stopping by, and if you haven't checked out the other videos we made on the Corolla, go back and check those out, because there's a bunch of other cylinders that you can see Gail's, like, you know, it's all fun and stuff. But anyway, that's that, and we'll see you next week.
Hey guys, you like what you see? You do? Fantastic. Do me a favor and hit that subscribe button down there for me so you get to see a whole lot more.